Bitcoin is a much better community than gold. Gold has always been fear-based marketing. Bitcoin, it's both a hedge against the failure of fiat economics, and it is a rising, new, exciting, decentralized, global, growing movement. We are at this early stage of what will be a major hype cycle. These companies are coming, and there's gonna be a huge amount of money that comes into Bitcoin. Bitcoin's gonna do very well. And I think in 6 months, if you watch this video, everyone will be talking about it.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of How to Sell Bitcoin. I am your host, Q, a member of the Swan Private team, and I'm joined once again by none other than Stephen Lepka. Stephen, we were chatting a little bit before, and I'm actually very, very excited to have this conversation with you of just how to actually build a brand on social media and then leverage that for whatever it is you are trying to do. And you are, quite frankly, an expert not only of building your own brand, but doing it in such an authentic way. Let's first give our audience a little bit of backstory for those who maybe are not familiar with some of your more outlandish comments on the Twitter sphere. Give a little bit of background about what exactly you like to talk about on Twitter.
So this is kind of an interesting and a funny story because I in no way set out to build a personal brand. It was literally not what I was trying to do. It's not where I was going. I remember when I first had an account, and I would just start posting about Bitcoin. And, I had maybe 5,000 followers or, it's kind of this early, I was at Swan and people knew I was at Swan and I had a couple thousand followers. And I would post about Bitcoin. It was like a Bitcoin account. All I talked about was Bitcoin. And I remember one weekend, I had been reading some book and I had some thoughts on philosophy, something Greek, and I was like, man, I really want to post this thought. But then I was like, if I'm talking about this too much, or I think I'd done a couple posts, and then I got a worry, and I was like, if I'm talking about this too much, people are gonna unfollow me. I'm worried. They're following me for Bitcoin. They're gonna be like, what the fuck are you doing, man? Why are you I followed you for Bitcoin. Why are you filling my feed with these random thoughts on obscure things? And I was legitimately nervous about it. I was concerned and I thought I had to kind of stick to the script and I'd lose, the people that were interested in following me. And obviously I wanted to be in the Bitcoin community and I had a job in a Bitcoin company. And so I didn't want to piss off Bitcoiners or whatever. And I remember being okay, I'm just going to on the weekend, I'll just if I want to talk about a different topic, I'll do it on the weekend. And there was even this moment I had it in my bio. I was it was something lame. This wasn't. I don't even think this was cool, but it was Bitcoin, something weekends, everything else or something. I don't know. The thing I'm trying to express is that it was a real concern. I really didn't expect that, and I'm sharing that to say that the process of getting to my account the way it's been was very unintentional. It was not a plan, and so a lot of what I'm going to share in this episode are just things I learned along the way, and I truly mean I learned them. I was surprised by them. They were not how I thought things worked when I started, and basically the thing I learned is that I think we live in such a commoditized world. I think we live in a world where everything is so image-driven, commoditized. You pick up the phone, it's a call center, it's a script, it's advertisements, it's media. It's very put together. It's very created for consumption. It's created for people to, it's created for the perspective of an observer. And I just learned that I think people just, they crave and they're sick of that, I think is actually what it is. I think they're tired of that, and the thing that feels like it's missing is just realness or unconstructedness, or just somebody be this is me. This is, I'm not putting on a performance. I'm not doing a shtick. I'm not trying to create an image. I'm just living. I'm just thinking. I'm in public. I'm just doing things in public. You can just do things, and that's I learned that was just the best strategy, and have fun with it, and lean in, and you don't need to be nervous about these things, and you don't have to be paranoid about sticking to the script, or is this appropriate corporate account, or is this like, whatever. You know, it's so I'm somebody that has like a lot of different interests, and they change over time, and I've changed over time. And so, I've gone through a few phases. Obviously, I'm pretty well known for like health posting, like sunlight and walking. I've walked for forever. I mean, I've walked quite a bit since I was 19, and I never even thought to post it. I think I started getting like a really high step count while I was on client calls for Swan in like 22 or 23, and I was like, man, I'm really like walking more. And then I like posted about it, and people were like, whoa, that's a lot of steps, and it was well received. And then I realized like Bitcoiners are they're like people who are interested in things. So Bitcoiners as a group, I think, have a lot of other interests. They have a lot of like, they like health, and they like obscure topics, and they like rabbit holes, right? They like rabbit holes. And so whenever I would post on like a non-Bitcoin topic, there was always this other like passionate group of Bitcoiners that would be like, oh, I love that. Like, let's connect on that. And I think the more of my interests that I just kind of brought to my Twitter account, the more people were like, oh, I also love that. And it was just so much fun. And it's like, it's a great way to do it. Anyway, so what I'm saying is like, it was very much like a process, and I was almost very surprised by how little you need to stay on topic, how little you need to curate something. Actually, the opposite. Like, not doing that, I think, is very beneficial. And if you want to like use social media well, just show up, lean in, put your whole self online, like in at least in most ways of that phrase, of just share yourself, your interests. And these are people, like, you know what I mean? Like treat everyone as a person. And honestly, I view Twitter as just like it's the 24/7 Bitcoin meetup in the sky. You know what I mean? Like it's the Bitcoin meetup that never in the cloud that never ends. That's all it is.
I love that. I mean, I think too, because obviously you and I come from a generation where, for the most part, like we were the MySpace generation.
Yes.
I think. Like I remember, like
I remember.
You had to pick that song, and like, oh man, it was so awesome. If you were on someone else's like top 4, top 8, all of that. So we've always had social media be such an integral part of our experience in this world. But I also think there's been a pendulum shift, and we've seen it a lot in different studies that have come out where, everyone loves to post their just like cookie cutter, like the top of the world when they're what looks like, winning or on vacation.
Yeah.
But there's this shift now to like the raw authenticity of actually being able to see people for who they are beyond just, what the image or the persona that you've become led to believe.
Yeah.
How do you balance that a little bit though?
Yeah, so there is a balance, right? There is a balance, and like, I think people can smell phoniness a mile away, and I think it's a bad strategy for anybody that's really trying to like do something, like, you know what I mean? If you're trying to run a brand or build a profile or whatever it is, I don't think you're gonna get far, like, you know what I mean? And that's like, there's so many hacks and tricks and tactics, and like you can use those to get a number of followers, and people use those techniques, but I think it completely changes who your audience is. I think that's the other thing. It's like you can do breaking news and like whatever, you're going to have a very different experience, the people you're connecting with. And I think Twitter's like the best networking tool on the planet. Like it's literally top tier. If you want to work in this industry, if you want to do anything, like Twitter is the single best place out there. It's the best recommendation. You just meet people. And the more you don't lean into like bullshit tactics, like the more you'll meet the people you want to meet. But you said, how do you balance it? It's not, there's a difference between disclosure and authenticity. It's not about like disclosing every little gritty detail or every like gut-wrenching fact or what have you, right? This isn't just like putting your whole life online or anything, but it is about bringing your whole self to it. And those are different things. It's not that everything that goes on gets posted, and you need the kind of tact and wherewithal to understand that there's appropriate topics and inappropriate topics, and there's just like even inappropriate's a strong word, but there's just stuff like, people don't care about and just isn't isn't the right thing, sort of content for public space. But it is realizing that like anything you're really interested in, I bet there's other people online that are really interested in it. So I think it's about being multifaceted. And in that, it's like, when I say kind of bringing your whole self, it's like, no one's just interested in Bitcoin. You're also interested in other things. You also have other passions, whatever that may be. And whether that's family life, whether that's cooking, whether that's health, gym, like, I hope that most people are working on more than one thing at a time. I've had a couple side pursuits while I was at Swan, and health pursuits, gym, other things, books I've gotten really into, posted sections from those books and what I was reading. So I'd imagine most people, if you're lucky, like you have different interests and you have different things you're working on and like sharing those. But it's like, sharing the things that are most interesting to you and having a good time doing it and having fun and not taking it too seriously and just like, ultimately, I think the Bitcoin community is just a lot of people that really love this thing and this world that has grown up around Bitcoin. And I think the simple truth is, for many people, there's not a lot of people in their day-to-day life that are really into Bitcoin. That's true for me. Like, I'm pretty well known, but there's not a lot of people in my immediate social friend physical location group that are like super into Bitcoin or even know what I do or what this world is. And so I think that's probably true for many people. It just still isn't a common interest. And so like people are getting that. It's a social group. Like people are getting that through Twitter. And that's why it's just such a powerhouse. It's such a useful tool. And fun and like meaningful, and I've just had a great time. And I think that's part of it, you know what I mean? Like you need to be having fun. You need to be having a good time. This is actually, it's not a minor point, and neither is it a cliche thing. I talk about this with Andrew Bailey all the time. I think he ran this point by me the first time, and I loved it. And I think it's 2 points he's made. One is, you're more able to trust somebody who is having a good time. Now, what do I mean by that? It doesn't mean that everyone that's having a good time is trustworthy, and it doesn't mean that everybody that's having a bad time is untrustworthy. But there's a way that as a group, like, there's a certain bias that comes with having a bad time. People that like the whole thing, it's negativity. They're against things. They're anti things. They're anti this and anti that. And we can think of this kind of cohort in so many different areas of life. There's a very different vibe to somebody who is supporting something positive in politics and someone who's just against something they see as bad and wrong. Those are two very different vibes. There's a very different vibe between someone who's having a bad time and someone who's having a good time. And the reason this is an important data point is it speaks to an underlying orientation. It speaks to the way they're showing up and engaging with the world and their life. When you're having a bad time and your experience of the world is having a bad time, all of your conclusions are less reliable, in my opinion. They just are. This is like a data point. It doesn't mean you're wrong, but it is less reliable. And it like people who are having a good time, people who are engaged in a topic, pushing for ideas, engaging in the world, and this is something that is like life-giving and positive, and they're enjoying it. Like, I fundamentally find those people to be more reliable in important ways. And so this comes to social media. Do not build a brand. Do not become a critic. Do not become the person that only has something negative to say about whatever it is that's just against things. That's not it. That's lame. Like, it's not saying there aren't bad things or things worth criticizing, or never criticize anything. But if your whole thing is just criticizing, you're effectively having a bad time. And you need to find what you like about the world and go have a good time online.
I mean, I keep cracking up because in my head, I am drawing assumptions on certain people on the Bitcoin Twitter sphere that, you have maybe alluded to, maybe not, but in my head, I have in my own mind who some of those people are. But to really expand on that point, like I'm someone who very much believes in energies in this universe, and the energy that you put out is what you will receive. And to your point, like I also want to be around just people who are enjoying themselves, people who are happy, active, having a good time, enjoying themselves, not people who are just, you know, talking about people behind their back or criticizing or just all around like have this negativity around them that just pulls everyone around them down as a byproduct of that. I also fundamentally and wholeheartedly agree with what you said, that especially online, you can find your tribe. Like Reddit is the best example of this. Like whatever your outlandish, insane, whatever you think that no one in your family or close friends are even interested in, I promise you there is a Reddit community and there is a subgroup within Twitter that very much is interested in whatever it is, be it anime, Bitcoin, I don't know, basketball, whatever. You will find your tribe online because that is how we have found a way to connect ourselves with people all across the world in real time.
Totally. 100%. It's amazing what's out there. It's amazing so I almost would define it, so two things. One, the rise of digital media is a story of sub-curation on content categories. What I mean is the reason podcasts have replaced television, the reason online websites and forums have replaced other mediums, like the rise of Twitter, the rise of podcasts, the rise of online. The dominant force there is that if you are running broadcast television, there's limited space. You can't spend an hour talking about this little niche thing, right? It's not mass market palatable. It's not like the viewers of CBS or CNN or Fox or whatever channel, I don't watch TV, but like they're not interested in the granular details of options trading, or they're not interested in like the benefits of sunlight on health, not as like an ongoing continuous conversation. Podcasts, one, because they allow people to see specifically the content they want to see, specifically their interests. There's no television show about circadian health, but there's 100 podcasts. And so if that's what I'm really interested in, I'm going to turn to a podcast. I'm going to turn to a community. I'm going to turn to, right? And this is how people are using the internet now. And these are the mediums that are becoming dominant. So like on one thing, like that's what's so powerful about it. It's this curation. And that's what you should lean into. Just lean into the things that you're happy to nerd out about all day, every day, and like show up and be consistent and just have a good time and participate in the things you like and the things that are life-giving and the things that improve your life, and just create a flywheel for yourself. Like, good times beget good times, and bad times in many ways beget bad times in a certain sense, right? It's
Absolutely.
they're flywheels. Yeah, and then on the second topic, I'm not subtweeting anybody or calling out anybody specific. Like, I've gone back and forth a little bit lately with a few figures, mostly because there was a lot of criticism. But it's like, this is something I've thought for a long time. This isn't like a recent comment. There are always brands. There are negativity brands. This is a huge marketing strategy. It takes a few different forms. And one is these financial brands that are always telling people what to be afraid of. This was the gold marketing. I think this is one reason Bitcoin is a much better community than gold. Gold has always been fear-based marketing. It's like the world's going to collapse. Like everything's going to collapse. The market's going to collapse. Everything's done for by gold. Gold is an end of the world hedge. Bitcoin had all the properties of gold, which like the gold investors had real concerns about fiat money, real concerns about inflation. But there was no positive aspirational story to latch onto. And Bitcoin provided it. It's both a hedge against the failure of fiat economics, and it is a rising, new, exciting, decentralized, global, growing movement. And so you can be positively aligned with Bitcoin, where it was very hard to be positively aligned with gold. It was very much always this kind of collapse marketing. And there's a ton of accounts on Twitter besides gold people that do that. Like Zero Hedge was well known for that. Other accounts, there are these like, these guys that are, what is that? Gayed, or he's a CFA on Twitter. He's just it's always going to collapse. Robert Kiyosaki, whoever it is, it's going to collapse. It's going to collapse. There's all of these things, right? And that goes viral because it plays on fear and it plays on people's anxieties. I just think that's such a soul-destroying way to run a brand. I think you pay a high price to do it. And the main reason I'm talking about, don't choose that path. Do not, it's almost this, what is that, Nietzschean quote, if you stare at the abyss long enough, it stares back, or there's a few lines. I might even have that attribution wrong. But there's this thing of if you spend all your day just putting out this amygdala activating fear marketing, you pay a price for that. It is soul harming. You are harming yourself. And so the reason you shouldn't choose that is just, it's going to be bad for you. It's not good. You're preying on kind of a negative activation pathway in other people's minds, and you're doing it to yourself too. So it's a much better strategy. Don't run those Twitter accounts. Find something that you're happy to support and put your energy into supporting it, whatever it is.
I think also to your point, there are even those funds, and I'm trying to forget. I do subscribe to one of them when they release their issues on what stock they're about to short and why.
Yeah, the short sellers.
Yes.
So, I had a thing about this. There's this incredible thing that happens to short sellers. So Michael Burry is an incredible example, a terrible example of this. So there's this sort of brain virus that happens. What did I called out, who was it? It was the pharmaceutical, Martin Shkreli. I had a thing he was getting tilted on shorts. And there's this thing that happens where someone will make a lot of money shorting something once. Burry made, billions of dollars. Shkreli had a big win. People will make a lot of money shorting something and they get famous for it. And they're now locked in a box where everyone wants to know, well, what's the next short? In most cases, there's not a giant next short. But now these people are on this merry-go-round of trying to find the next big thing to collapse. And it becomes this miserable cycle where usually they do terribly. The performance sucks. Jim Chanos is on Twitter right now beefing with MicroStrategy and the treasury companies. He's going to short Metaplanet. He's short MicroStrategy. And this is a guy that ran a short fund. He did really well for a while because he successfully predicted one or maybe a couple failures. And he made a lot of money. But guess what? Then the fund failed because he kept trying to short things, and he went short Tesla, and guess what? Tesla didn't fail. And he spent all these years betting against Tesla, and now he's betting against MicroStrategy. And there's not a consistent edge in being against things. It's even mathematically skewed. Your maximum return is 100% when you're shorting. Your maximum loss is, also all your money. But if you add in more, you can keep losing. Your maximum gain when going long is infinite. You can buy something and you can be up 500%, 600%, 1,000% over time. You can only ever be up 100% shorting, and nothing really goes to zero much of the time. So those gains actually start slowing down. Once something's lost half of its value in this way, it's typically going to be harder for it to lose another 50% or something. Those gains start getting smaller in a certain way. All of that to say, it is you're at a disadvantage. And I'm not trying to have some sort of nonsense, cult of positivity, toxic positivity thing. It's really not me. I mean, there's a reality to, pain and difficulty and all the things in this world that one should not avoid or try to, just get around it by trying to have a good time when one is not in fact having a good time. If one is not having a good time, You need to admit that fact, and you need to fully lean into the fact you're not having a good time. So I'm not trying to do that, but I am trying to say that there is like clear structural advantages to being for something versus being against something. On a personality level, on a psychology level, even on a portfolio level, the optimum strategy is always going to be to find the thing that you are most positively supportive of, that you think is good, and put all your energy behind it. It's a flywheel. It drives portfolio returns. It works and it works on social media. It's just the thing to do.
There was something you said that like really, I want to obviously bring this back to the social media conversation, even though I could talk to you about markets, shorting, and all the in-betweens for days on end. But this idea of getting boxed in, and I think you brought it up excellently with like a lot of these famous short sellers. People are looking at them. What is the next thing you want to short? But even you alluded to this in the very beginning of our conversation of like, at the beginning, your entire online presence was about Bitcoin, and to a degree, you are boxed into this. And how do you make that shift in an authentic way? Because we kind of find ourselves, unfortunately, in a place today where, for example, on the political space, if someone in Congress decides, hey, you know what, I might have said this, or I might have voted for, this tax raise or this stance on immigration, but you know what, I was wrong, and I'm going to change my position on this. Like, we demonize them for that,
Dude,
unfortunately.
Yeah. So I'm going to answer that question, but I'm going to jump off the last part of what you said.
Please.
I think it costs you nothing to admit that you were wrong. And I think a skill that people, unfortunately, are not very good at is admitting that you're wrong when you're wrong. Because the thing is when you're wrong, everyone already knows that you're wrong. You're not like keeping it a secret because you don't admit that you're wrong. Like, when you're truly wrong about something, people know, everyone knows that's paying attention or cares. Like, they've already figured out that you made a big public stance about something that was incorrect. And it costs you nothing to own it. It costs you nothing to just be like, hey, I got this wrong. And I actually value that really highly. And it's something I try to practice online. I think it's actually particularly important online that when you get it wrong, just get it wrong. It doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't make you lesser. Nobody gets it right all the time. And like I said, it's not a secret when you get it wrong. And so just like, own your wins, but also own your losses. It's more real, right? Like, you don't need to be perfect. There's many things I've gotten wrong over the years. There's many things views I've had that actually being able to admit you're wrong helps you move to being right? Like, the sooner you can admit that you're wrong, the sooner you can readjust and pivot and be correct. I think so many Bitcoiners can relate to this with crypto. Like, so many people got into crypto and owned blockchain investments and all these things. And at some point you had to be like, man, I got it wrong. I was wrong. Let me readjust. And so you're talking about being boxed in. That was your other question. I think you can't. Pivots don't happen all at once, generally speaking. When you are represent yourself naturally. So I think it's bad when it's like all at once and it's totalizing, because then that just feels like some sort of brand move or whatever. The reality is, if you're representing yourself authentically, those changes happen slowly over time. I don't think most people, like, when I first got into Bitcoin, I was very, I kind of thought fossil fuels were bad and like climate stuff and what have you. And over time, I came to have a more moderated approach on that. That was like, actually, we need fossil fuels. The whole global economy would collapse without them. People would starve. We have no immediate substitutes. And so at the very least, one must be pragmatic about these things, that you can't just like turn it all off, right? But that transition, that ideological transition, took half a year for me to kind of go around, maybe a year. So that was something I changed my mind on. And if you represent that over time, it feels real. If you just like keep publicly posting the opposite opinion and then on a day like completely pivot, that feels fake. Because that's not how people change. We take time to change our mind. And so I think like it should be gradual, but not like as a tactic. I'm not prescribing a tactic. I'm just saying that like one should continue to represent yourself and it will naturally be gradual. And there's some level of drift and change. In fact, that's good. People should change over time. That means you're growing. That means things are different. That's healthy and good. You shouldn't stay the same. Nothing stays the same. There's amazing studies on this that like by the time you're 70, you're a completely different fucking person on basically every level. There is no stable self. Like there's maybe tendencies, there's orientations, but like there's no like fundamental, solid, fixed self in any of us. It is in flux. We are in flux, and
Isn't
that's okay.
it like every 7 years, like every single cell in your body has been replaced? So like essentially every 7 years, you're a completely different cellular organism.
It's true. Yeah, it's true. We all change so much. And I think a marker of health is actually that you change more. Health is more change, not less. I think to be more fixed as a person is an indication of a lesser state of health or robustness. Change is kind of natural and is a marker of health. And so like, don't be afraid to kind of lean outside of the box that you've carved out or share side interests and topics on social media. But like, just, it should be a gradual representation of your real experience. You know what I mean? Even when it's like, you have multiple interests, right? Like you're not thinking about all of those interests all the time. There's an ebb and flow, you know what I mean? And I think there's an ebb and flow to topics. And I think something that happened for a while is there were periods of time where Bitcoin news was really slow in like 2023, 2022 was a bear market-ish. And there'd be these periods where nothing was going on. And so, you know what I mean? I'm just not thinking about Bitcoin at the time where there's nothing going on. I'm thinking about other things and I post about those things. When Bitcoin would heat up, kind of like it is right now. Right now, I'm mostly just thinking about Bitcoin in a lot of ways because there's so much going on, and I'm posting about Bitcoin. I think there's kind of a naturalness to that as well.
I think to your point too, like the indicator that I always love is like how much infighting is there in the Bitcoin
Yeah.
Twitter space, and like that's how you know if we're in a bull or a bear market when everyone is just arguing over something as silly as cast iron or stainless steel pans for your steak.
It happens. No, it's a real phenomena when the market is nothing's happening. Bitcoiners start to fight, and some of that's inevitable. I'm not even saying some of that's fun. I think there have been some very good-natured Bitcoin fights, but it's also like the other approach there is like flesh out the rest of what's going on in your life, man. Like there's other things like, and I bet there's Bitcoiners online that want to talk about those things.
I want to ask you something, and I want to first start with sharing one of my favorite stories that I ever heard as we're talking about social media. And in turn, what we're really talking about is individual content. But do you know why why we call them soap operas?
I don't.
So they were called soap operas because they were originally created as long form advertising for soap. It was literally to teach the public to wash their hands and use soap. And here we are now where it's an entire genre that generates a significant amount of cash flow in Los Angeles for better or for worse. But that's how it started. And what I want to hear from you, less so for someone like yourself who's more established in social media presence, but someone who's trying to figure it out, not necessarily just in the Bitcoin space, but at large. Do you need to start with an intention of what you're trying to go for, or just stay authentic to who you are and grow from there?
I think in the very beginning, you need to have a target. I think like that 0 to 1,000 is a tough zone to be in. And I think you need to pick one thing and focus on it. So I think that is like, it's not saying you can't go outside the box, but you do need an area that you're driving energy towards, and you're producing content, you're engaging with that community. You do need to cross some sort of minimum threshold, I think, just to not get drowned out in the algorithm. So it's not that you can't cross the lines during that phase, but like you're not going to make progress if you're just like, you're spread too thin in that first couple thousand followers. So I think it is worth being a little more mindful. when it's small, if your express goal is, doing something on social media, which it doesn't have to be. You can just have a good time. That's fine too. But if you were trying to grow it, I think it is being a little intentional in the beginning.
Yeah, I also am curious because this was a conversation, and obviously Uncle Rockstar is a dear friend of mine, and we know his conversation around the idea of having pseudonyms and NIM accounts in general, which obviously some NIM accounts are larger than yours or mine, while others are practically invisible. What are your thoughts on those type of accounts versus a more public facing account?
Yeah, I mean, I totally get why people want to be anonymous, especially in Bitcoin world and on Twitter, and it is different in certain ways, right? Like it gives a different set of challenges and advantages, right? I don't, it's kind of up to you what you want to do. I think I was always going to be somebody that like, I want to be able to get on a podcast. I think it's harder to do. I mean, you can do it. People have disguises and things. But it's obviously like harder to be out in public, you know what I mean? Just doing the damn thing. So, I think for people that want to be like fully engaged in this world, like it's harder to do that a little bit. It's harder to work in it, to be public. People do it. And, but, obviously like it's easier to be controversial when you're a NIM. And I don't say that as a bad thing exactly. Like there are times that it's very important to be controversial or say controversial things, and it's easier to do that without backlash, personal reputational backlash. Now that skews incentives a little bit, but this has been going on for all of human history, right? People publishing books under other names and all sorts of things. Like this is a long history. So it's a different sort of profile with different advantages, and I fully understand why people want the privacy at times.
I'd be remiss, and I want to wrap this episode up with something we've alluded to throughout this series, but this is a movement that frankly has taken Twitter by storm to the point where when you and I each had different interactions with people that believed that Vibes Capital Management was a real thing. Can we hear the lore? How did this start and get to the place where you have a client messaging you or emailing you asking about it, or I have someone asking, wait, is this like a fully funded fund, or are they still raising money for it?
It is a real thing. Vibes Capital is a real thing. It's not real. It is. The question is what it is. It's hard
Look,
to
I was
define.
rocking that tank yesterday. I was told
Yeah.
I can't on this series, but I was rocking my Vibes Capital Management tank.
Vibes Capital Management is a lot of things, and it will probably be a lot of things in the future. It will change and grow over time. One of the things that it certainly is a movement, and one of the things it also is a social club for Bitcoiners. So those are two things that it definitely is. And it'll probably be a lot more. It has been, it stands for, I think, and this is ironic because I started this like prior to accepting a job at a Bitcoin treasury company. But there was this anticipation of like, there's going to be a lot of corporate engagement in Bitcoin this cycle. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's going to do wonders for the price. I think it's a natural byproduct of Bitcoin evolution. It was always going to happen. But there will be a lot of corporate energy. And I thought, really Vibes Capital was something I've been talking about for 2 years. It started in almost a very serious observation that I have invested based off Vibes for the last several years and done actually really well and outperformed in kind of picking investments, timing investments. Like I have made some major investment decisions based off Vibes. What do I mean by based off Vibes? I mean, it just really seemed that way. There's this is a top, this is a bottom, this is the time to do that. And I've made calls, I've made falsifiable public calls, and really I'm just going off Vibes. I'm going off what it seems like. And so that became something I was talking about, and it became kind of a real, it is a counterpoint in some ways to the overwhelmingly spreadsheetification of all things in the modern world and the spreadsheetification of finance. I am fundamentally against the idea that you can model asset prices. Like, I think you literally can. It's not just like Bitcoin. Like, The driver of asset prices is human psychology, and you can't model human psychology. So, like, I've always kind of been a little bit of a critic of this I'm not saying quant analysis and quant trading doesn't work, but it's brute force probability arbitrage. Like, it doesn't know about things. It's just like, yeah, if you just sell an asset every time when the RSI is at the maximum value and you buy it, or like these sort of trends, they're just like little spots of arbitrage. They're not views on the future or on assets or on what will succeed or fail. So it's just kind of some general pushback there. And then also, I think just like Vibes Capital, I think, is a way to have a good time, especially in a year that there might be a lot of corporate vibes in Bitcoin, and I think it's a way to have fun.
I look, I'm all for the vibes. I'm here for it for sure. I'm definitely like trying to hide myself a little bit because I may or may not be one of the tea leaf readers who does enjoy, staring at a stock chart and just being like, oh, okay, it made a doji cross, so we're at an unprecedented or unpredictable future moment, or I don't know. I do think there is some validity in it, but I also, from what you're saying, it's not for a longer term
That's what I'm
view.
saying. That's what I'm saying.
If you want to
Yeah.
use it to see like a local top or a local bottom, sure, it can work. But if you're looking at something such as an asset like Bitcoin, where your intention very much should be, we're holding this asset for a minimum of 5 years, if not decades plus, irrelevant what the local top or local bottom is.
It's also, the question I'm trying to answer is, let's say you have a technical construction that is typically a topping structure, which what doesn't matter what it is. Let's say that's only going to be accurate. Like, of all the times that structure plays out, maybe it's accurate 60% of the time and it's inaccurate 40% of the time, right? You have an edge. You have enough of an edge that you can arbitrage that in the way I was talking about. But the question is, why does it work 60% and not work 40? What is it about the 40 that causes that to not work is just as interesting of a question. And I would generally say, like, the vibes are different those times. The 40% that it doesn't work, etc., the vibes are different. Something else is going on. There's a greater context. There's a greater, like, there was this really amazing breakthrough news item. You know what I mean? Like, Bitcoin's overextended, but guess what? It just keeps going. Why? Well, because MicroStrategy just announced they were buying Bitcoin for the first time ever. And this is like a huge new piece of news. It doesn't matter what the RSI is. And so what I'm saying is that there's just this greater contextual landscape that this all exists in, that one must realize that these kind of technical structures are probabilistic, and that's it. And I have no problem saying that they are probabilistic, especially because some of these things are like self-dealing, meaning like momentum measures are by their very existence a measure of overextension. And so, yes, when something does nothing but go up for a while, for a very long period of time, it is more vulnerable to a pullback. Obviously that's true. But one has to, when one asks the question of like, why is it uncertain, you come into a more interesting landscape that, we're talking about causality here. We're talking about what actually happens, not what is probabilistically likely to happen. And I just think it's a way people don't often think about markets with that clarification. And it's important.
Where are the vibes heading now?
The vibes are good. The vibes are very good. We are at the early stage of, I think, what is a mania in some ways, a true hype cycle for Bitcoin treasury companies. Everything I see is we are at this early stage of what will be a major hype cycle in a traditional sense. Like, these companies are coming, a huge amount of money is going to flow into them. They're going to do very well. They're going to buy a ton of Bitcoin. There's going to be a huge amount of money that comes into Bitcoin. Bitcoin's going to do very well. And I think in 6 months, if you watch this video, everyone will be talking about it. everyone will be talking about these things. Like I think we're on the launching pad in so many ways, and I think that's what's ahead of us.
Amazing. Stephen, I want to say thank you again for your time. We have one more episode left to record together. But if you are watching this and not already a Swan client, hop on over to swanbitcoin.com, set a time with our team at Swan Private, or feel free to reach out to me directly, q@swanbitcoin.com. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll be back with the final episode very, very soon.